Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets. It's a big weekend for Bob Baffert out in California. Let's hit the road to the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. Well, hi, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to another episode of the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and you'll notice that my trusty colleague, Kaylie Shapiro, is unable to be here today. We have a couple of very special guests to help me out, though, as we talk about a couple of races out in California. Kaylie's a little under the weather, so hopefully she's resting up, feeling better soon to be back later this week as we preview the Fountain of Youth, the Devonadale, the Busher, and the Gotham down in Florida and up in New York. So listen, before we get into all the good stuff, I want to remind everybody to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel. And we have race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, and weekly programs. So make sure to like and subscribe today. Well, like I said, we have a big weekend out in California. Bob Baffert has got a bunch of very impressive horses running in the San Felipe for the boys, in the Santa Ysabel for the girls. And I wanted to bring on two guys who know all about California racing. If you follow Kaylie, you know who they are because every week they're on the Big Hoof Energy live stream, the Gallop Out YouTube channel. Want to welcome in my friend Ryan Anderson and Jackson Muniz. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here on NYRA Bets YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about the West Coast Derby and Oaks preps. It's a big weekend all over the country, so I'm happy we get to focus on California a little bit.
Yeah, always good to talk racing with you guys. Very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, it is a big weekend out in California. And listen, I know there are two 6-horse fields that we're talking about, but the point I was making, Ryan, before we started recording was if you care about the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, you got to watch these two races this weekend because there are some monster horses running out there. And it might not be a 12-horse field like we see in Oaklawn for the Rebel last weekend or anything like that. But when you line up these horses and take a look at what Bob Baffert has running in his stable this year for both the fillies and the colts, it's really impressive. You guys see it all the time out there. But Ryan, it's one of those things where, Bob's back and he's got a loaded barn this year.
Oh, yeah, he's back and he's not playing any games. He has A-stringers all over the place, and we're seeing some more run back this weekend. Obviously, $3.2 million purchase that I'm sure we'll talk about, and a nice filly running in the Santa Ysabel that I'm excited to see run back off a nice improvement after breaking her maiden first time out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we will dive into this. So let's get into the San Felipe, which is running on Saturday on that big cap undercard. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about who we like in the Santa Anita handicap. That's going to be, I think, a really fun race as well. But let's talk about the San Felipe, grade 2, mile and a 16th. And the headliner, of course, is Barnes. Ryan, you alluded to it, the $3.2 million son of Into Mischief. And this is one who is a perfect 2 for 2. I don't think it was a mistake that Bob shipped this horse to Churchill Downs as his first entry at Churchill to end his 3+ year suspension from the track. There was a message being sent there, and it is, I'm coming back, and I'm going to bring this horse back the first Saturday in May. This is a really interesting field because you have a horse like Journalism, who won the Los Alamitos Futurity, over a horse like Getaway Car, who we then saw win the Sunland Derby. So it's interesting to see this because it's not just the Baffert horses, but Michael McCarthy's got a good one in here. Jackson, I'm going to start with you. Whether it's the pace dynamics or a particular horse you want to focus on, what kind of draws your eye in this race?
It feels like we have to start with the pace dynamics, right? Because Baffert has 3 of the horses in this race. It kind of feels like it's kind of a 3-horse race, and 2 of them are trained by Bob Baffert, and the one that isn't is Journalism, who comes from off the pace. So he kind of needs a little bit of a setup here. And I don't really anticipate Barnes and Rodriguez to get in each other's way, right? We kind of saw it a few weeks ago in the Bob Lewis, where there was a lot of speed from the Bafferts, and they just kind of let Citizen Bull do his own thing, and they kind of just tracked from behind. So I would anticipate kind of the same thing happening here. It's just a matter of which horse do we think is going to make the lead, whether it's Barnes or Rodriguez.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that point was only illustrated further this past weekend when Matticat Road managed to go 22 and change, 45 and change in the opening quarter and half of the Rebel, but somehow was sitting 4th in the Bob Lewis. So, yeah, I mean, Ryan, it is one of those things. I mean, do you have any sense of, do you want to give Barnes a little bit of experience coming from off the pace maybe? Rodriguez seems a little bit maybe more like a need the lead type of horse. Juan Hernandez, though, is a great speed jockey. So any sense of maybe which of those 2 horses is going to lead him into the first turn?
It's always tough when he controls the field like this. He can go a variety of different ways. He can kind of play everything how he wants. But the feeling, I think, is Barnes is the one that's going to go to the lead. Coming out of those sprint races in the first try, around 2 turns, it's going to kind of be his easiest test. I see him kind of going out to the lead similar to the Citizen Bull win that he had last time he came out. Nice, easy lead with a Baffert off his hip and just kind of finished off the race as you would expect. So, to my eye, it's Barnes and Rodriguez kind of going 1-2 around there. I think Barnes gets to the front.
So I'm curious in that regard, Jackson, you kind of alluded to it, the fact that journalism is a little up against it. This is a horse that does come from off the pace a little bit, but I mean, you talk about a horse that is bred for distance. I mean, this is a horse that when you look at the pedigree, it really pops. Curlin up top, you have Bernardini and Uncle Mo influences underneath. This is a horse that looks to be bred for the classic distance. And, maybe the mile and a 16th doesn't necessarily help. Maybe it's more the Santa Anita Derby in the next race for a horse like journalism as he would appreciate more ground. But, is there any way you think a horse like journalism can make up ground and get to these Bafferts potentially?
Yeah, I don't think it's completely out of the question because the other horses in this field aren't necessarily slow. And if your connections of these long shot horses, what is your if you do have a path of victory, what is it? It's probably to get to the front somehow and make these other Bafferts chase you. I don't think I know you're not going to come from behind and beat them. So maybe we get some unexpected pace from a horse like Berlin Wall or Smooth Cruising who do have some sprint speed, and it kind of sets up for journalism. It kind of falls into his lap a little bit from off of it.
Yeah. Ryan, any thoughts on whether journalism has a chance, or do you just see it kind of being like that Bob Lewis where it's a little bit of a merry-go-round? And to that extent, a lot like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where it was Citizen Bull and Gaming kind of all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had to give me a horse that I want in the Derby, I'm probably going to take journalism because I think he's got the breeding for it, as you just pointed out. But in terms of this race, it looks like it runs through the post 3 and 4 with Barnes and Rodriguez. I did reach out to Michael McCarthy, and he was able to provide me some information on journalism coming into this weekend. And essentially, he's training as well as they could ask for at the barn coming in here off of getting a nice winter break after winning convincingly in the Los Al Futurity. So he's already got some Derby points to his name. I believe he has 10 coming in here. Third place gets him 15. 25 puts you in a really nice position going into the Santa Anita Derby, or if McCarthy decides to ship out. It sounds like journalism isn't fully cranked up, but they're still expecting a really solid effort out of this colt debuting as a 3-year-old. So I look for him to finish in third, but it looks like the race is going to kind of be controlled up front.
Yeah, no, that's great insight as well. And, if you watch XBTV, you've seen some of these workouts for both Barnes, for Rodriguez, for journalism, and they all look really good. I mean, these are all horses that are very impressive. Before we move on to the Santa Ysabel, because, we can talk this race to death in terms of the bobs and the dynamics of all of this stuff. Barnes is such a lightning rod horse because of that big sales price, because of, him being the one to end the suspension basically at Churchill Downs. I'm curious from both of you. Jackson, I'll start with you. What is your upper bound expectation of Barnes? Do you take this horse as a serious Kentucky Derby winner, knowing that the Into Mischief sire, the questions about a mile and a quarter, I think, are always there when you see that Into Mischief influence up top. Is this horse that good? Or, do you think this is a horse that can really kind of meet its match maybe in the Santa Anita Derby or potentially in the Kentucky Derby?
I mean, I think he could be that good. And the fact that Baffert chose this horse to be his first starter back at Churchill Downs kind of tells me all I need to know about what he thinks about him. I think he's really, really talented. You alluded to it, though. The question is the mile and a quarter. Can he get it? I think if I'm betting the race, predicting it right now in March, I would try to beat him. But, things can change between now and then, obviously. And we're going to find out a lot more about how far he wants to go on Saturday.
Absolutely. Ryan, obviously a horse named after longtime assistant Jimmy Barnes, which again tells you their opinion of this horse. You don't name a horse that might be a mid-level allowance horse after your longtime assistant. So, clearly big expectations there, but I'm just curious, do you buy into the Barnes hype? Do you think this horse might be that good, or are you a little bit more skeptical?
I mean, I'm pretty bought in. Up until this past weekend, Rebel Weekend out at Oaklawn, this Barnes was my top runner from the Baffert camp. But that debut by Cornucopian might, shuffle things up a little bit. But I think Barnes going forward, I think he lives up to that price tag. It's tough to do. $3.2 million. It's tough to earn on track, but he's shown all the right things. He's done everything the right way to this point. Obviously we see these, 7-figure sales. They don't always, hit it out of the park, but then you have runners like Sierra Leone who, go on and have a wonderful year. I believe he was 1.9 or somewhere in that sense, maybe even more, but he lived up to that price tag. I think Barnes has the ability to do so because he certainly looks the part.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was going to mention Sierra Leone before you said it, and 2.3 million was Sierra Leone, and he made it up on the track. I mean, you win the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, it's amazing what you can do, and suddenly that looks like a really good investment. So, he's still a little ways behind Forever Young, who now has like 16 million in earnings, but Sierra Leone will get there at some point. I won't feel bad for the connections. Listen, let's turn the page to the next day. And let's talk about the Sunday race, which is for the fillies, and that is the Santa Ysabel Grade 3. Again, 1 mile and a 16th for those 3-year-old fillies. A field of 6 again, 3 Bob Bafferts. This one, though, I have a feeling has to start and stop with Cipriani. And Ryan, I'll start with you this time. Kind of what draws your eye in this field? I know you've been very high on Cipriani. She's had some nice works leading up to this race, but maybe talk a little bit about this filly.
Yeah, this filly obviously debuted and got a pretty light buyer, but the barn in the camp was really high on this filly when they sent her out first time, and she won the right way. Came out last time, improved her buyer significantly, coming off a bit of a layoff, finishing second behind Tenma, who I believe is probably, if not the current Oaks favorite, certainly one of the top 3 choices. If we're going to run it next weekend, so ran behind a really nice runner in Tenma. Interesting about this, and we talked about this a little bit on the pre-show, is the jockey booking. Seeing Mike Smith take the mount here with Juan Hernandez on Maysam, who just really didn't fire a step last time out. But I'm looking for Cipriani. I'm all over this filly in here for sure. I think no matter the jockey, I think with one of the 3 of us on this filly's back, I think she wins on Sunday because I think she is the goods.
Well, maybe one of you two. She might not want to carry my amount of weight, but it is notable that Mike Smith would potentially be up on the mount here. And Cipriani, that would actually mean that this would be her 3rd jockey in 3 races, as she started with Juan Hernandez and had Martin Garcia last time out. Now, you mentioned Mason, which is interesting. I think that's kind of what the horse everybody's looking at, because this horse just ran, 10 days ago, basically. And for Bob to wheel this horse back on short rest, you wonder if this is going to be a day of scratch potentially. And then if there's a day of scratch, does Juan Hernandez go back onto Cipriani? And so, there might be some dominoes falling. But Jackson, I'm interested, when you look at this race, is it Cipriani and everybody else, or do you see a potential for another horse to maybe upset the field a little bit here?
Well, Ryan and I have talked about this before when we're talking about Baffert 2-year-olds or, early season 3-year-olds. If I'm going to try to take a stand against Baffert, I want to do it against his fillies. His colts they're usually a lot better. They're a lot more consistent. Yeah. And if I'm going to try to beat him, I'm going to do it in the filly race. And the other thing we talk about is usually when he enters 3, it's not a very good sign of confidence for Baffert. Typically when he has good ones, he only enters 1 or 2. The most recent examples are where they ran against Copian in the Santa Monica. Baffert had 3 of the 4, Copian won. And same in the La Brea, Baffert entered 4 horses and Copian won that race too. So usually when he enters a lot, it's because he doesn't have a lot of confidence in all of his horses. He's kind of just throwing a bunch in there and seeing what happens. So, and with these 3 specific Bafferts, I just haven't been overly impressed with any of them. I'm going to try to beat him with Super Speed, who's trying the dirt for the very first time. I do think it's noteworthy that Prat ends up here. He very easily could have ridden for any of the Bafferts, probably his pick. And the fact that he shows up on this horse is pretty interesting to me. And I will say she also worked out the other day she got grouped in with Madaket Road, who we saw how well he ran the other day. And she more than held her own in that workout. So I think the dirt won't be a problem. It's just kind of a matter of, is she good enough to beat these horses?
Yeah, listen, she is going to try to make that transition from turf to dirt, but you talk about a Triple Crown pedigree sired by Justify out of an American Pharaoh mare. So, you got Triple Crown up and down there. And again, this is a horse with some expectations. It was a $460,000 sale. So this was nothing to sneeze at as well. And as you mentioned, what drew my eye as well was Prat up. And you have to figure that Prat is, if not Bob's first call, certainly his 1B call, if Juan sometimes, has the loyalty that as the regular rider out there in California and kind of the right of first refusal. But the fact that Prat is on none of the Baffert horses and is instead riding for Sadler in this race, I thought was notable as well. This horse has good tactical speed, on the turf, and we'll see. I mean, some of those works, like you said, it looked very good coming into this race. So if you're going to try to beat her, this is a horse that certainly makes sense. And if those, buyers are able to transition from turf to dirt, then, she's certainly going to be in for a little bit of a fight on Sunday in this race. But, I think everybody's just going to be waiting to see when Tenma runs next, as she's really the filly that I think we all think is kind of the top Baffert horse. And after that, I think it gets a little bit more diluted potentially, unless Cipriani goes out and makes a big statement on Sunday.
Yeah, 100%. And sorry, Jackson, I'll let you go in a sec. But Super Speed also worth mentioning for Sadler. He's, I believe it's 7 for 31, so 23% going turf to dirt in stakes races. So that's got to give you a little bit of a vote of confidence. And you guys touched on the Flavien Prat booking. I thought that was pretty interesting that, Baffert doesn't have him on any of his three when, Prat could have taken that call. You'd assume it's his, first, maybe second choice at the absolute worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I will say about Mason, just to kind of maybe close the loop on whether or not this horse is running as well, even if this horse runs, this goes back to, I always love Kaylie, and I enjoy talking about the first crop sires and all the stuff like that. She's a big Mackenzie fan, as many people are. And Mason is sired by Game Winner. And I have never been all out on a sire quite like I am on Game Winner, as his offspring just do not fire first out, and they do not like going long. That's for sure. 1 for 34 right now in dirt route races for his offspring. So, you start looking at pedigree as these races start going to 2 turns, a mile and a 16th, a mile and an eighth. That's when those things start to matter a little bit more. And, we see it with horses all the time, even with the boys. You see those practical jokes. Well, they can get a mile and a 16th on the right circumstances. Start going to a mile and an eighth. You start going to a mile and 3/16, a mile and a quarter. It's another story. So going to be a lot of fun on Sunday there. But before I let you two go, first off, want to make sure that we give you guys some love. And Ryan, let people know where they can find you on YouTube, on Twitter, and what you guys have going on this week. Because listen, I bring you guys on. You guys bring on big stars. You bring on Andy Sterling. You bring on Caitlin Free, who got the Kentucky Derby trifecta. You guys are bringing on the right people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and also you got to be thrown into that list because we bring you on a handful. I think you're our most common guest, so we always love having you on. But yes, you can find us, Jackson, myself, and Kaylie over at the Gallop Out on YouTube. We have shows about basically twice a week. We just wrapped up a Get Bucked episode with Jackson, myself, and Peter Thomas Fornatal of In the Money Media. We're covering all the Gulfstream Stakes this Saturday. I believe 7 straight, going races 8 through 14. So that was really fun for him to join us. Tomorrow, Kaylie, myself, and Andy Serling are going to be going over all the Aqueduct Stakes going on this Saturday. Jackson is going to be hitting home runs on the softball field, so he's excused. He's got an excused absence for that, but I'm looking forward to it. We got shows going, again, twice a week. So over at the Gallop Out, you can subscribe to both of us on X, or follow us both on X. I'm 20 lengths clear, and he's Jax Muniz with a little underscore in there.
Jackson, what you're trying to hit bombs? What are you doing? What is this, your softball league that you're in? What's going on?
Yeah, I actually have work. I do have a softball game, but it's coming later that night. But yeah, I have a good excuse for missing. But it's going to be a really good show tomorrow. The Aqueduct card on Saturday, really good. Bunch of stakes races. Really looking forward to it.
No, it is, and that. I think, without tipping my hand too much, although I just wrote the article for NYRA Bet, so you can find it up there. But I'm going to be trying to beat the 2 favorites in that race and in the Gotham. So that should be a lot of fun. But listen, before you guys leave, the big cap. We haven't had a grade 1 in a minute. Actually, since the Pegasus World Cup, we've not had a domestic grade 1. So excited to see these grade 1s roll back around. Locked, Hit Show, kind of the 2 big horses from the East Coast, Midwest coming west. Ryan, Jackson. Ryan, I'll start with you. What's your pick for the big cap, and kind of how do you see that race playing out?
Yeah, I covered this yesterday on Pacific Horse Players, another show that I do with the HHH Racing channel. I have a bit of an upset in the big cap, and I'm going with the number 1 Express Train for John Sheriff. I know he's 8 years old. He's an old man, but he always tries, and I am convinced he's the only horse in that field that truly wants the mile and a quarter. He is out of Union Rags on the top, which you and I have talked about on one of our shows, that if Union Rags is not going long on dirt, it's a shame on the trainer, or something like that, because that is truly what his progeny want to do. So Express Train, he's coming into it in the same pattern as when he won the big cap in 2022, going through the Lafitte Pincay and then into the San Pasquale, and then now stretching out to the 1.25 mile distance. So I think he truly wants the distance. Locked, he's the most talented horse in that field. He might just win based off talent, but Express Train's going to be in a top 2 finish. So that's how I'm seeing it.
Well, listen, as a 44-year-old, I'm going to be rooting for Express Train because we all need to get a win for those of us who are a little bit older. That always makes us feel good. And, hey, listen, we just saw Romantic Warrior at 7 years old run a huge race over in the Saudi Cup. So, under the right tutelage, under the right training, these horses can absolutely still get those big races in them at this age. Jackson, your thoughts on the big cap?
I think it's Locke's race to lose. It looks like there's plenty of speed to set it up for him. He's the best horse in the race. As long as he handles the ship to California, which, isn't insignificant. We never know how they're going to ship. But as long as he shows up with his best run, I do think he's the best horse and he's going to get the right kind of trip. So I'd be all in on Locked in that spot.
Well, if he wins, this sets up an exciting Saratoga, I think, which hopefully you guys are able to come out to, because it is, fierceness will be there with Mike Rapoli in tow, which always makes it entertaining. That, Sierra Leone's going to be there. And then if you have Locked, Mind Frame's coming back on that Gulfstream Park mile. That's exciting. And so, you suddenly have this very deep, older handicap division. And then you got a horse like Hit Show, who might be the new version of Skippy Longstockings. It's just like this horse that knocks around grade 2s and grade 3s and gets a lot of paychecks and a lot of wins. Might not quite be grade 1 caliber, but man, you need more of those horses out there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for tuning in this week on our Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Make sure to give Ryan and Jackson a follow on X and on YouTube. For Ryan and Jackson, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.